Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. The Haunt of Love and Lies. Episode 17. Chapter 152. Killian's point of view. I was surrounded by blue light. It was warm and peaceful, but abruptly, everything changed. I felt myself being pulled away into the darkness. It was different and unwelcoming. I felt a deep pain rooted in the core of my chest. It was sharp and piercing for a second, forcing me awake. Weakly, my eyes fluttered open and I tried my hardest to keep them open. My vision was blurry. The pain in my chest had subsided. I tried moving, but that was impossible. Then I heard a drone of voices. I couldn't make out anything they were saying, and when I forced my gaze to the direction it was coming from, everything was a blur. I shut my eyes, taking several breaths, before pulling them open. My vision wasn't perfect yet, but much better. I scanned around, and I couldn't recognize where I was. How did I get here? Just then, the door pulled open and a figure came into view. A woman, wearing a long brown dress. I closed my eyes. I felt the woman move close to the bed. Before her hand could touch me, I gripped it, pushing her closer to me, and I had my hands on her neck. Hey, relax. I swear I mean no harm. She held her hands up in the air. I'm a friend. Who are you? I firmed my hands on her neck, fighting off the dizziness that had invaded me. Xena, she sounded quickly. Don't exert yourself too much. You just woke up, you need some rest. Where am I? Somewhere safe. Let go of me first, and I will explain everything slowly and calmly, she voiced softly, her hands still held up. I loosened my hold on her neck, about to set her free when the sound of a familiar voice made me snap my head to the door. What in the goddess' name is this? You wake up and this is the first thing you do. My eyes fell on Kaiser, as his deep hazel eyes inspected me. Kaiser. My brows crippled in confusion, as I let the young woman go. Yeah, it's good to see you too, he said, tossing a shirt at me. What on earth are we doing here? I asked sharply. Sheila? Where is she? At the mention of Sheila's name, I felt Riker's presence within me. He was weak. I tried pulling up from the bed, but Xena grabbed me. You should lay still. You may be all healed up, but you've been unconscious for a long time. Unconscious? What are you talking about? My eyes darted from the woman to Kai. What is going on, Kai? She picked up a cup from the table and handed it to me. Drink this. It'll help. Kaiser moved closer to me. One question at a time, Killian. Firstly, you should drink that. You'll need it. I gulped down the liquid in the cup, dropping it on the table. I pushed myself up from the bed, forcing myself to stand. Where is this place? I asked, walking to the door, which led me to another room. This wasn't my pack. How on earth did I end up here? Where's Sheila? Morgan. I turned to Kaiser, who was now leaning on the wooden wall, his deep hazel eyes watching me. Say something, Kaiser. Seriously, you don't remember anything, he sounded. What was the last thing you remember? My eyes narrowed on him as I tried recollecting my memories, but at every attempt, I was greeted with a torturous ache in my skull. I groaned. You don't remember the attack, do you? Kaiser's voice sounded again, still leaning on the wall, while Xena settled on the wooden chair next to me. The attack? What are you? I paused on my thoughts immediately, as short images flashed through my mind. I remembered. The ball and the attack. My eyes rounded. It was the Dark Circle. They had attacked the pack, searching for Sheila. Elle lifted my gaze, and they connected with that of Kai. Please tell me, where is Sheila? She was taken during the attack by the Dark Circle, he said, and I felt as though something within the core of my chest stopped. It took me several seconds before I could recover from what Kaiser just told me. I grabbed a handful of my hair. I don't remember. Because she was taken right after you were murdered by the Dark Lord's warlock, Kaiser voiced, pointing at my chest. What? A sudden coldness enveloped me as I followed his gaze, and I could see the small scar that was seated on my chest. Yet, I know this is too much to take in at once. But we don't have time, Killian. When you died, Sheila lost it, and her magic brought you back, placing you in some kind of slumber. I doubt she even knew what she did, because right after, she was taken by the Dark Circle army through some portal. I jumped in, chasing after her. By the time I regained consciousness, you were here too. Here? What do you mean by that? I said, roving to the door. I pulled it open, stepping into the midnight darkness. The entire surrounding was unfamiliar. It's called Oasis, Kaiser came up behind me. You can call it Vladimir's prison world. This is why we could never find him. This place is heavily guarded by magic. How long has it been? I asked him. It's 8 weeks since the attack, Killian, and you have been unconscious since then. We tried everything to wake you up, but none of it worked. Not until now, he replied. And Sheila? Where is she? My amber eyes found Kaiser's deep irises, and instantly, the look on his face changed. Kaiser sighed. About that, I think you need to sit down to hear this, he muttered seriously, and that scared me. Kaiser's point of view, and that sums it all. I apprised him of everything, including Sheila's new situation, without leaving behind a single detail. I stood against the wooden wall, and my eyes were fixated on Killian. He was seated right opposite me. His face was buried in his hands. I had no idea what was going on in his mind, but he hasn't muttered a word since. To be honest, I was surprised he hadn't flared up yet, especially when I informed him about what was happening with Sheila, that she had a mate now, and he was the Dark Lord himself. Killian rubbed his face with his hands, gently. I can't feel her, his voice was low, barely above a whisper. That's expected, I nodded. You died, Killian, that must have broken your bond with her, and now that she's mated to that imbecile, there's no way you will be able to connect to her. No. No, that can't be. Something must have happened to her. I am certain that he did something to her. Killian was up from his chair. Yeah, I thought so too, I started, but he cut me off with haste. I have to see her. Killian moved closer to me. I've spent 8 weeks in here, Killian, and I've been unable to see her. Vladimir had her locked up in the fortress, and when she steps out, she's always accompanied by his witches. There must be some kind of way to get into the fortress. He began pacing back and forth. None that I know of. It's heavily guarded. Kai. I have to see her. Sheila needs to know I'm alive. I regarded him for a second, before moving to Xena. The only way we can get to see her is outside the fortress. She constantly goes to the dark cave, but with company. That's the only way we can get to her. All right, that's fine. How do we do this? He stood next to me. Xena and I have a plan, I exhaled. Xena will be joining Nikolai's coven tomorrow, and will gain access to her magic. She could help us take care of Vladimir's watchdogs, buying us time to see my sister. Killian's gaze traveled to Xena. Xena's my mate. And a witch too, I answered his unsaid question. I could help, but it won't take long. I may be getting my magic back, but there's a limit to what I can do, she muttered, pulling her sleeve up and showing us the pyramid symbol on her wrists. What's that? Vladimir's way of keeping Oasis in order. Every prisoner has one of those, stripping them of their magic and abilities. And only Nikolai can undo its magic, I explained. All right. I just need Sheila to know I'm alive. So as long as I can see her. It'll do, he muttered. Xena nodded, standing up. For now, I advise you to get some rest. You need it. She's right. You'll need all the strength you can get in this place. I settled in one of the wooden chairs, watching Killian, and I could see his mind drift far away. Deep down, I knew there was no way he was getting any rest. Killian's point of view, it was almost evening. Xena, Kaiser, and I have been waiting in the woods that led to the dark cave for hours now. I was restless. I didn't know why my heart was pounding so fast. Ever since I woke up last night, I just couldn't seem to think clearly. Everything was so messed up. I shut my eyes as I pulled my back against the trunk of a tree. Kaiser and Xena, who was his mate, were together, a few distances behind me. I massaged my temples with my fingers. I felt exhausted and weak, but I just couldn't find any peace, not until I saw Sheila. I had to see her. Nothing made sense at the moment without Sheila, without my mate. I still couldn't believe I died, and worse, Sheila was taken. These 8 weeks I've been unconscious only felt like a night's sleep. I lost 8 weeks of my life, and Sheila as well. Oh, goddess! That was exactly what made me restless. I refused to think deeper about it. It was absurd for Sheila to be mated to him. Something else was going on. I knew there must be a reason she was from his side, and I had to hear it to get rid of this rotten pain deep in my chest. Sheila had to know I was alive. She had to know she brought me back. I could only imagine what she must have gone through thinking I was dead. I just couldn't wait to see her. We had a plan. Kaiser and Xena were going to distract the witches, using her magic, buying me some time to see Sheila. Killian, I snapped my eyes open as Kaiser and Xena moved closer to me. We hid behind one of the towering trees as the sounds of horses drew closer and I saw her. I saw Sheila. I could feel Riker's presence on the surface. I froze and my heart slowed its fast beating. I couldn't tear my eyes away from her. I didn't know when tears formed in my eyes as she moved by, racing on her horse. I couldn't let her go without seeing her. I was about to step out of the shade when Kai held me back, pinning me against the tree. What, Killian? The plan is to get to my sister, not get us exposed, he yelled in a whisper. She's with company, he pointed out, and right behind her, a group of women dressed in cloaks rode behind her. Witches? I hadn't seen them. She's leaving, Kai. What now? Xena sounded in a low whisper. We wait until she returns from the cave, hopefully, we will get our chance, he said as I pulled out from his grip, sauntering deeper into the woods to get some air. We waited in the woods until the sun had retired for the day and darkness took over. Sheila still hadn't returned from the cave. I was curious about what exactly she was doing there. Whatever it was, I knew it wasn't good. We waited for a few more minutes in silence. It was from a far distance we heard the horses approaching. It was more than one. I could make out the sound of 3 horses. She was with 2 other witches. I moved silently to where Kaiser and Xena were. This has to be quick, Killian. I don't think my magic can hold out 2 witches at the same time, Xena whispered, and I nodded. We must leave now, Kaiser added, covering his face with a small cloth. I did the same. Thank you, I nodded at Kaiser, before navigating my way out of the woods, moving closer to the route where Sheila's horse would pass by. I hid behind the trees, waiting in the darkness as the horses moved fast, and immediately, there was a mild rumbling on the ground that carried a small breeze. Just like we planned, Xena made use of the opportunity, and using her magic, she pulled them into the woods where she and Kai would hold them for a few minutes. As soon as Xena got rid of those witches, my eyes fell back on Sheila's horse, but she wasn't there. I stepped out from the tree's shade, and before I could take a step further, I felt the presence behind me. Take a step further, and I swear it'll be your last. Her soft voice filtered into the darkness and I just couldn't fight the waters that gathered in my eyes. I felt Riker rise to the surface as Sheila's scent invaded my nostrils. I pulled my hands up in the air, still backing her. Where's Sybil and Callie? What did you do to them? She spoke hurriedly. If you value your life, you would. Her words were cut short the instant I swerved around, and my eyes connected with those blue crystals of hers. There was something in them that made my heart ache. It was like time paused along with her. I could see the shock imprinted on her face, as she was unable to force her eyes away from mine. A tear slipped down my eyes, knowing she still recognized my gaze. Slowly, I reached for the cloth covering my face, pulling it down. Her lips parted, as she took a small step backward. Her round beautiful eyes held mine intensely. Sheila, I called breathlessly, taking a step forward, but she took another step back. Sheila, it's me, I sounded again and her eyes still didn't move away from mine. I swallowed the distance between us, reaching for her, but before I could touch her, she moved back, her eyes tearing away from mine. Stay back! She shouted, as her blue eyes fell on me again. They were completely cold. What nonsense is this? I know this doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to me either. But it's me, Sheila, and I am alive. You brought me back, Sheila. Kaiser is here as well, we came through the enough. She yelled, and I could see the glow in her blue eyes, but she hid it quickly. Whatever you think you are doing, I will advise you to end it and leave now. That's if you value your life, she sounded again. There was nothing in those gazes of hers, and all I could see behind those gazes of hers was a deep, endless void. She retracted her gaze from me and turned around to leave, but before she could, I reached out and gripped her wrist. Those tingling sparks erupted, and I heard the soft, almost unnoticeable gasp that left her lips. Instantly, she sent me flying using her magic and I crashed against a tree. I groaned, pushing myself up on my boots as Sheila moved out of the woods. I went after her but halted the instant the witches from earlier caught up with her. I had no choice but to back against the trees. Sheila didn't stop, she kept moving until she reached her horse with those witches following her. She got on her horse and rode off. I leaned against the tree, watching her fade out of sight. What happened? Kaiser voiced behind me. Tell me, Killian. What happened to Sheila? What did she say? Nothing, I replied, getting a ridiculous look from Kai. Seriously, Killian? I blew my chance to see my sister for you, and she said nothing. Didn't she recognize you? I mean, it's possible. Vladimir has his way of doing that, Xena said, and I shook my head. It's not that. Something's wrong with Sheila, Kai. She recognized me, but pretended not to or didn't want to believe it was me. I don't know, I huffed out, gliding down to the ground. She's wearing his mark. I told you she was mated to him, he counted his words, spelling them out for me. I shut my eyes as Riker curled up in a corner of my mind in pain as the ugly truth settled in. My mate was mated to another. She was beside him, spending every awakening hour beside him, and no doubt against her will. This was our last chance to get to her. With what happened tonight, it'll be much harder getting to her, Kai was muttering more to himself. I know. That's why we need to get into the fortress. We need to know everything that's going on there, I was up. We can't just waltz in there. Remember, that imbecile would recognize us the instant he sets his eyes on us. I do know that, I turned to Xena. That's where we would need your help, please. Her eyes moved from mine to Kaiser's. All right, but whatever we are doing, we need to be careful. From what happened tonight, the Coven will be more alert. We should hold back to the shack, Kaiser suggested, and we all nodded. More than ever, I need to get into the fortress and know exactly what's going on. Sheila's point of view. I moved faster on my horse till we reached the fortress. I rode past the warriors scattered around the fortress grounds, wearing similar clothing from the circle, having half of their faces covered. I got off my horse, leaving it to a warrior. I gripped hard to my dress, as I moved hastily past the hallways, walking as fast as I could. I couldn't wait to get to my chamber. I could hear the calls of Callie and Sybil behind me, but I couldn't deal with any of their nonsense right now. I couldn't let anyone see me like this, I wasn't in the right state of mind. The second I burst through the doors to my chamber, I slammed them close, using my magic to ensure no one got in. I loosened the ropes clutching around my neck that held my cloak in place. It was suffocating me. I tossed it on the floor, pulling my hands to my face. I felt the chaos inside me, as well as Adie's struggle to the surface. She was fighting for control and my body was vibrating intensely. It caused the burning lamps in my chamber to burn fiercer and the calm air around me began to grow rough and violent, creating a disaster within my chamber. Adie, please stop. Adie was fighting harder for control. She wanted us to go back to the woods. She had completely lost it and wasn't thinking straight. I couldn't let us play right into one of Vladimir's stupid games. It isn't him, Adie, I yelled, enunciating each word, and every struggle of hers ceased. This wasn't the first time he had tried to get into my head, to break me and see right through my emotions. I couldn't let that happen. I was trying my hardest not to lose control of my emotions, but at every attempt, I felt my heart shattering the instant the thought of Killian standing right in front of me flashed through my mind. My emotions were spiraling out of control, and I lost them. My body and soul gave in to the pain that had taken dominance within me, feasting on every piece of me. It was saddening. I wanted to scream, to release everything I felt at the moment, but I couldn't. I placed my hands over my lips in a weak attempt to muffle it all and tears found freedom from the gates of my eyes. I was completely frozen. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't hold back the tears that burned my eyes, rolling down my cheeks and my thoughts, and every piece of me was filled by him again. Killian. I couldn't believe this. This was the cruelest I had ever been tested with in all my time here. I held on tightly to my dress, as my knees kissed the floor. I wasn't in control of anything at the moment. I felt Adie retreat to a dark corner of my soul. The familiar pain that had always coursed through her merged with mine, staking my chest. I fell hard on the floor, crying my heart out, and I was forced back to that moment I lost Killian forever. It played over and over in my head, hurting me to the depths of my soul. Killian was dead. I watched him die right in front of my eyes and held him in my arms. I shut my eyes closed and I could still see those gazes of Killian boring right through me, and for a painful second it felt like him. I didn't know what was going through that psychotic mind, but this was absolutely the worst. I swear it felt like it was him, Adie voiced slowly within me, and I couldn't deny it. She was right. For a second, I almost believe it. I shut my eyes, leaning against the bed. Stop it, Adie, it isn't him. Think about it, what if he's really, please, Killian is. I paused, as a tear slipped down my cheek. Dead, I added. This is not the right time to lose it and wish for something never possible. You know better than to believe what you see in this place, I said, tiredly. I was tired of it all. This only spelled problem. It simply meant Vladimir still had a suspicion about me. This was the wrongest time for that. The moon's eclipse was days away, and Vladimir was still testing me. If he had the slightest doubt about me, everything would be over. He would finally get what he wanted on the night of the lunar eclipse, and everyone's life, including mine, will be at his mercy. I couldn't let that happen. I had to win this fight at all costs. I had to avenge Killian's death and put an end to Vladimir's plans. I shook out of my thoughts when I heard the sharp knock on the door. I was up from the floor. I used my magic and fixed my chamber quickly, wiping off the tear stains on my face. What is it? I asked. The Dark Lord requests your presence in the Grand Hall, I heard Sibyl's voice and I was surprised. I wasn't informed he was returning tonight. I will join him soon, I voiced loudly. Yes, my queen, I heard the tapping sound of her boots exit to the hallways. That doesn't sound good, Adi muttered. I have a bad feeling about this, she added, returning to the deepest corners of my mind. Swiftly, I fixed myself up, keeping my emotions at bay. I lifted the spell I had placed on myself, restoring my connection with Vladimir. I left my chambers. I headed for the Grand Hall, and Vladimir was there. He was standing at the window, staring into the darkness that wandered outside. I strode to where he was. The instant I was by his side, his golden gaze found mine. He placed the goblet in his hand aside, pulling me into his arms and his lips captured mine. He kissed me and his hand pinned me to his body, and his other hand got lost in my hair. I let myself go, kissing him back, until we pulled apart, panting. He kissed my marking spot where his mark was, inhaling my scent. I missed you, he muttered against my ears, pulling away, his thumb brushing my lips. Me too. I thought you'd be back tomorrow, I wrapped my hands around him, burying my head in the crook of his neck. I felt his presence and worry at the back of my mind. I drew away from him, and my blue eyes met his. I could not wait until tomorrow, his fingers trailed my jaw and his golden eyes held mine. I was worried, more so when I was informed about tonight's incidents in the woods. My lips curved into a small smile. I tilted my head to the doorway where Sybil was standing with her back turned away from us. What happened? He questioned as his thumb pulled my face to him, and his golden piercing eyes locked with mine. I would also like to know what happened. 1 second, they were beside me, and the next second, vanished from sight, I sounded, tearing my eyes from his piercing ones. I see. Then it's more serious than I thought. First, it was the shooting, and now, this. I fear someone may be after your life, he spoke shortly, after regarding me for long seconds. That's ridiculous, Vlad, as well as impossible, I tried keeping my voice calm. All the more reason it's serious. I will have Nikolai look into it, love, he kissed me, pulling away a little. Until this matter is resolved, I suggest you remain within the walls of the fortress. It's far much safer. What? No, Vlad. That's not a good idea. The moon is almost upon us and we haven't made progress yet with the rituals, I started. What he was suggesting was something I couldn't agree to. Nothing is more important than your safety, love, he insisted, his blazing golden crystals regarding me intensely. And what about the rituals and preparations? We still have a lot to figure out, I uttered. Don't worry yourself so much. Nikolai has an idea of what the problem is. That's good. I will speak to him about it, and together we can. I began, but his fingers sealed my lips. No. As you said, the moon is almost upon us. Nikolai will make the preparations, and do the needful while you are safe and well rested for the blood moon. You'll need all the magic you can get. What do you say? I pushed a smile, giving in. Sounds like a plan. Perfect, he held a mischievous smirk and I tried my hardest to fight off the worry that clouded my thoughts. I knew Nikolai was behind this sudden change, and whatever new plan he had scared me. Sheila's point of view. I kept staring at the mirror, watching my very own reflection. I could hardly get any sleep last night, especially after my time with Vladimir. I could feel it in the depths of my soul, something was happening. Nikolai was getting to Vladimir. He had begun to suspect the process of the ritual, he must know I was doing it wrong. And now, just when I had to be involved, they were trying to cut me off. The blood moon was a few days away and we were supposed to have found the right vessel by then. A vessel that had enough energy to contain the Shota's magic before we had it transferred to Vladimir on the night of the blood moon. That has been Vladimir's plan all along. He wanted the Shota's magic. That would be terrible for all of us. Vladimir was a mixed breed, being a wolf and a vampire. The last thing we needed was him getting his claws on the Shota's magic. I couldn't let that happen. That would make him a step closer to his plan. The Shota's magic was the darkest kind of magic that existed thousands of years ago. It was darkness without form or origin and was destroyed, or rather, imprisoned away by the ancient council. It was erased from existence and history, but through the years, Vladimir somehow learned of it, and his coven of witches made a crack within its prison walls, giving him access to it. The only way the ancient council was able to bind and imprison this dark magic was through a blood ritual that was anchored thousands of years ago by the council witches, and now, Vladimir and his witches plan to anchor another blood ritual to unbind the Shota's magic, setting it free, and this was his end game. The Dark Circle is preparing for a war with the North, right after the South regions were conquered. That war was only a disguise to achieve his goal, and with the blood of so many lives that would be sacrificed, a blood ritual would be anchored to set free the greatest darkness that would consume every one of us. No one would be spared. I drew in a deep breath, remembering my constant dreams. It scared me, for all I could see was darkness and death. Oh, Goddess! I placed my fingers on both sides of my temples. I had only until the blood moon to get everything in motion and ensure that dark magic never finds a vessel. I shot up from my chair, hearing distant voices from outside the fortress. I went to the window, took a peek outside, and it was some members of the Dark Circle. They had begun to arrive for today's meeting. I connected to Vladimir through our mate bond. They are here. I fixed my dress and left for the Dragon's Court. I met with Vladimir on the way to the court. We entered the court and I took my seat right next to him. Many members of the council had turned up for the meeting. In a few more minutes, the court was filled, and everyone was seated round the crystal table and we began. The South has joined forces with the northern regions and they've cleared almost every pack, kingdom, and coven affiliated with the Dark Circle, one of the members spoke up, and several more began to air their views. We must attack the North the soonest before the Council conquers every one of our alliances outside the walls of Oasis, another said. I sent a glance at Vladimir, he was deep in his thoughts, and even with the mate bond, I didn't have an inkling about his thoughts. He remained silent as everyone kept mumbling nonsense. Silence. Vlad's deep voice sounded. It's true that the Council has targeted almost all our forces outside the Oasis. But it would be ridiculous to rush into things. The North must have absolutely no idea what's coming their way. Not until I have access to Shota's magic, there will be no war, he said, pulling his hands under his chin, and just then, the doors were pushed open, revealing Nikolai. He wasn't alone, he was with a man, and behind them was Ren. He was the commanding head warrior of the Circle's army. He came with a few warriors, and they positioned themselves at the doors with their faces covered as usual. "My apologies for keeping you all waiting," the man apologized, taking his seat along with Nikolai. He looked vaguely familiar, but I couldn't tell where exactly I had seen him. But it had to be from the Crescent North Pack, even though I couldn't remember. He nodded his head to me, as I caught his stare on me. He knew me. "What is going on, Felix?" Vladimir asked, and the court became quiet. "There's a reason why you are among them, the least you could do was warn us of the attacks." "Again, I apologize, but things have been crazy since the Circle ambushed the Crescent North Pack, and rescued the Queen." He paused, glancing my way. "That wretch, Amelie, has been having visions, and the council is aware. They are aware of the Shota's magic, and right now, their priority is locating the White Wolf." I expelled every thought that attempted to graze my mind at the moment and tried concentrating on everything they were saying, but somehow, I couldn't. I kept getting distracted. At first, I thought it was all in my head, but I wasn't. The hairs on my skin stood as I felt a piercing heated gaze on me. I shifted my eyes to the warriors guarding the doors. But I couldn't tell exactly who it was. After a while, the meeting was adjourned. I left the Dragon Court, taking the hallways back to my chamber. My thoughts were filled with that man, Felix, as I tried to remember where I had seen him from. But I couldn't. I could have seen him once, but what worried me more was the fact that he was an internal spy in North Central and was working for Dark Circle. That was not good at all. I wished I could send a warning out to my brothers, but I couldn't, especially now I couldn't leave the fortress. "Sheila," I stopped walking, hearing Vladimir's instant call. I turned to find him a short distance away from me. "I am sorry, Vlad. I didn't hear you," I went to him, embracing him tightly. I brought my gaze to him. "I don't know why, but I have a bad feeling about all of this. Can that man, Felix, be trusted? If the council knows about Shota's magic, then they know exactly what we are up to. And you know what that means, they'll stop at nothing to stop us. Rest assured, Felix can be trusted. I placed him in the council for a reason, he hasn't disappointed, never," he muttered, kissing me. "Take a rest today. You need it." I inhaled, smiling. "I guess I do. You were right. These past few days have been too much. Nikolai should take care of the preparations while I get prepared for the night of the blood moon." "That's it, my little witch," he leaned closer, kissing me softly as his hands wandered on my body. "I will join you shortly." A smirk grew on his lips and I knew what he had in mind. He kissed me once more, before leaving. I made my way to my chamber hurriedly. I shut the door the second I was in. Now I remembered where I had seen him. I met him at my Luna coronation. Felix was a member of the council. He was Vladimir's spy in the council. Leonardo was absolutely right. He had always suspected a traitor within the council. And that traitor was Felix. He has been leaking every piece of information from the council to the Dark Circle. That was how the Dark Circle knew of the prophecy 14 years ago, and that was how they knew the identity of the white wolf. No wonder the Dark Circle managed to get their hands on the Phoenix Stones. Holy Goddess, I must find some kind of way to get word out of Oasis, before the Council and everyone falls into Felix's and the Dark Circle's trap. I blocked my thoughts and rushed to the hidden drawer beside my drawer. I grabbed my journal and pen. I slit my palm and used my blood to send a message to Jaskier and the few witches I had on my side. We had to hasten things up. When I was done, I pulled out the remaining items from the drawer. When my dreams started, I made a promise I would do anything to stop Vladimir from achieving his goal and gaining access to the dark magic. But just in case my plans didn't work out, I had to have another plan. The vortex. My mother had mentioned it in one of her grimoires I had gone through at the Black Blood Pack. It was both dangerous and powerful and made from onyx stones. Jaskier has been helping me out with it, but it was far from complete. The sharp knock on the door startled me. Quickly, I placed the items back in the drawer, concealing them. I rushed to the door and unlocked it. Before I could pull it open, the door pushed open, and one of the warriors hurried in, locking the door behind me. What is the meaning of this? I was gripped by the waist before I could take a step further. Almost immediately, he dragged down the cloth covering his face, and once more, I froze. It's me, Killian, he rushed on, and before I could react as much, I felt the familiar taste of his lips on mine, and tingling sparks shot through my body, awakening something I thought had died. It couldn't be. Sheila's point of view. His lips moved gently on mine, kissing me softly while my body burned with a feeling I never thought I'd feel, ever again. It was him. It was Killian. Reluctantly, he pulled his lips away from mine and my blue eyes met his deep amber ones, sparkling with tears. Oh, Killian, I gasped in disbelief as tears wandered free. My body was vibrating intensely as my trembling fingers moved up to his face. Killian, yes, it's my love. It's me, his large hands covered mine, bringing it to his lips. I'm alive, just how? I saw you dead, Killian. I held you in my arms. I started in tears, but he pressed his soft lips to mine, silencing me. You did, Sheila. You saved me. He held me tightly into his hands, burying his face in my hair as confusion broke within me. I don't understand. How are you here? I had so many questions, but Killian's large thumb silenced me once again. One question at a time, love, he chuckled, drawing a breath. It's a long story. Really long story. I have been unconscious all this time. I only regained consciousness 2 days ago. He caressed my cheek, wanting to say more, but he shook his head. There's so much I want to say, but right now, I don't have much time, he rushed on, and my body stiffened instantly as I remembered exactly where we were. Oh Goddess, Killian, you have to leave. I couldn't help but panic. You can't be here. Vladimir mustn't see you here. Why? He cut me off sharply. His hands cupped my face and his deep amber eyes pierced mine. All I could see in his depth was a sickening pain that was quick to pierce my heart. Killian lowered his gaze to the crook of my neck where Vladimir's mark was. He stared at it briefly before shutting his eyes, and the tears flowed through. A bitter pain settled in my chest, stabbing me to the point I felt my legs weaken. I held tightly onto Killian, unable to stop the tears that kept flowing, blurring my vision. You are mated to him. I don't understand, Sheila, how could that be possible? Killian's eyes found mine again. Please, tell me he is forcing you to remain by his side, please tell, I beg you. I had no other choice, Killian. I died when I thought I had lost you forever, I muttered, sobbing. Sheila, he began, but I stopped him. Killian, you can't be here. You have to leave now, I gripped his arm, pulling him to the door. Vladimir mustn't see Killian, let alone find out Killian was still alive. I couldn't even imagine what would happen if he did. Leave? Sheila. I'm not leaving you here, Killian was adamant. He held me back in his arms. Kaiser is here as well, what? Killian's words left me motionless. My brother is here as well. Yes. Kaiser and I came through the portal, right after Nikolai took you, and he's been trying to get to you. What Killian was telling me was shocking and unbelievable. I didn't know. I could never have imagined Kai was here all these weeks. This simply means that Kai had been the one that sent me that crafted object. Where is he? Is he here in the fortress? I asked quickly, and Killian shook his head. No. He couldn't come. Xena's magic could only help get one person through, he said. My brows were crippled, confounded. Who's Xena? I wanted to ask, but this wasn't the right time for this. Vladimir could walk in any second. Killian, please, you have to go. Vladimir could come in any minute and everything will end badly, I pleaded with him, hoping he saw reason. All right, fine. You are right. He mustn't find out about Kai and I. I'll leave, but promise you'll come to find me tonight. We have to talk, Sheila, and Kaiser is dying to see you. Killian held me. I wasn't supposed to leave the fortress. I couldn't give Vladimir any more reason to doubt my intentions. I thought briefly, meeting Killian's unyielding gaze. I will come, I will wait for you outside the fortress. No, Killian. That's dangerous. I will find you, I promise, I uttered quickly, and before he could ask how, I snaked my hands around his neck, kissing him. I used the opportunity to race through his memories, and I found exactly where they were staying. A small cabin in the woods. Killian's arms pinned me to his body, as he deepened our kiss. I felt myself getting lost in the feeling, but I couldn't. No, Killian, you have to leave now, I pulled away, hurrying to the door. He released a deep sigh, following behind. He covered his face, sparing one last glance at me, before leaving my chamber. I hurried to the door, watching him as he scampered out of the hallways. I exhaled the air, imprisoned in my lungs, resting my head on the door the second I shut it close. I blinked back, the tears welling in my eyes. I couldn't believe it, it all seemed to be a dream. Killian was alive. He survived Nikolai's attack. And was here in the oasis, with my brother. Everything felt like a dream. Oh, goddess, I had questions. I couldn't stay still. Adi has been restless, prancing within the corner of my mind without taking a rest. She wanted to go to him, but I knew better than that. If I didn't tread carefully, I would only endanger my brother and Killian. I had to fight the urge and was forced to watch the day go by slowly, and finally, darkness covered the land. I waited for more hours until it was dead in the night. Then I hurried to the clothing rack and grabbed one of my cloaks, wearing it over my dress. I left my chamber, and using my magic, it was easy for me to sneak out of the fortress unnoticed. I had to leave my horse behind and go on foot. The last thing I needed was drawing attention to me. With the hood of my cloak over my head, I took the shortest path to the village and sauntered deep into the woods. I kept walking for what seemed like hours, covering my tracks. It took me long before I reached the cabin I saw in Killian's memory. As I approached, I spotted Killian waiting for me outside the cabin. "Sheila," I raced to Killian, flinging my body in his arms. Lovingly, he scooped me into his arms and hugged me as if his life depended on it. His muscular arms engulfed my small frame and I buried my face into his chest, inhaling his scent which Adi and I had greatly missed. I felt him resting his lips and nose on the top of my head, and we stayed like that for a few minutes, until Killian pulled away, reluctantly. His large hands cupped my face and moaned at the sweet tingles that erupted as Killian swept back the locks of my hair before he crashed his lips on mine. The feeling of having Killian in my arms after all these weeks was surreal. I could feel Adi's light purse deep in my mind as Killian's lips kept assaulting me. Before Killian and I could take things further, forgetting where we were, the wooden door of the cabin creaked open, and someone cleared their throats. I pulled away from Killian, knowing exactly who that could be. My blue crystals fell on my brother, Kaiser. I couldn't possibly begin to describe the emotions that swirled in my chest. Without sparing a second, I hastened to the door, sprawling my arms around him. "Kaiser." It was still hard to believe both Killian and Kaiser had been in Oasis all this time, and now, they were right before me. Kaiser's large arms covered me, and I held on to him for a few more minutes. I just had to be certain none of these were a dream. After a while, we pulled apart, and my eyes held Kai's hazel pear. "I'm so happy to see you, sister," he said to me, wiping off the tears that streamed down my cheeks. "Me too, Kai," I replied, never letting go of his hand. "I don't understand. How did you get here?" I asked, needing answers, and right then, a young woman moved to the door, leaning against the doorframe with a warm smile that reached her brown eyes. I couldn't help but smile back. She was not familiar, and the symbol on her wrist made it clear she was a prisoner in Oasis. Hopefully a friend. I felt Killian's presence behind me, as Kaiser's gaze traveled from me to the woman behind. "We should go inside. We have a lot to talk about," Kaiser suggested, and I couldn't agree any less. Things had started to heat up in Oasis, and right now, I would appreciate every help I could get. Sheila's point of view: I was seated in one of the wooden chairs in the cabin, Killian was beside me, Kaiser sat on the table close to the door, and Xena, who I just found out was Kaiser's fated mate, was right opposite us. She was a witch as well, who I was grateful to for helping both my brother and Killian. The cabin was completely quiet as Kai explained everything to me about how he followed Nikolai through the portal into Oasis, meeting Xena, and Killian's situation. I had no idea what I had done to save Killian, but whatever it was, I kept thanking the goddess for it. Xena had tried to send word out of Oasis, but it's impossible, Kai said, rubbing his hands together. We have no idea what's happening on the outside. I can't stop thinking about Leonardo and the others. What exactly happened after Nikolai took you and we jumped right after? I could feel Kai's worry. It was justified. Every single day I also wondered what exactly happened to the others after Nikolai had left with me. Things were pretty bad before Killian died. Leonardo must be going insane, searching for Kaiser and me, and Morgan had no idea about Killian. What worried me the most was Valerie. There was this sickening feeling in my chest that I couldn't seem to push away. I just hope everyone was all right. That's right. Nikolai is channeling the magic of thousands of witches, and that's what is holding this place, and keeping everyone in it. It's impossible to send word out, without Nikolai knowing about it, I told them as I felt Killian's intense stare on me. All right, it's your turn, Sheila, Killian's deep voice cut through the quiet air. Tell us exactly what happened, he asked calmly. Although, everyone could feel the chaos spiraling out of control within him. I drew in some air, feeling everyone's gaze on me. I didn't even know where to begin. I got up from my seat, moving to the wooden walls. I have no idea what happened after I was taken by Nikolai through the portal. I woke up a few days after, and I had already been marked by Vladimir, and branded with this on my wrist, stripping me off my wolf and magic. I pulled up the sleeve of my dress, showing them the pyramid symbol. Nikolai tried to alter my memories with his magic. Vladimir's orders. They wanted to brainwash me, making me believe a twisted lie, and when it didn't work, they tortured me and wouldn't stop until I broke. I had no choice but to give in, at least with my sanity still intact. I became what Vladimir wanted me to be, and acted exactly how he wanted. Sheila, I am sorry, Kaiser walked up to me, spreading his arms around me. I could see the pain that filled his depth, and before he started feeling all guilty, I made him know none of these was his fault. It was no one's fault. I shifted my gaze to Killian, who was still seated on the chair. His rich amber eyes were on me with his emotions raw at the surface. A mixture of rage, pain, and confusion was all I had been feeling from him. What do we do now? Zena broke the lingering silence, asking an important question. What were we going to do now? One thing was certain, we had to figure out how to get out of Oasis before the blood moon. Sheila, you can't go back to the fortress. If truly Vladimir is starting to suspect you, you are in danger at that side, Kaiser said, backing against the wall. I shook my head, about to disagree when Killian's voice filled the room. For the first time, I agree with Kaiser. You can't go back to that imbecile. I could see the rage brewing in Killian's eyes as he tried to contain his emotions. For a second, I forgot exactly how he must be feeling. I wasn't just being by Vladimir's side, I was living as his mate. I knew more than anyone how excruciating it felt. But if I refused to return to the fortress, we would only be unleashing hell. I hate to admit it, but you are right. That savage beast will find us, and it won't end well, Adie's voice echoed within me, as she rose to the surface. I have to, I said, and Killian ran his fingers through his head in outright disapproval. If I don't go back, Vladimir would turn Oasis upside down, just to find me, and that would endanger every one of us. Sheila has a valid point. There's no way she would hide out here without Vladimir finding her, or you both. Thankfully, Xena reasoned with me. And I don't plan on hiding. We must figure out how to get out of here. Things are worse than you imagine here, and it's only a matter of days before everything and everyone we care about outside Oasis suffers the worst fate, I said, as everyone threw confused looks my way. What do you mean? Killian was the first to react. Vladimir is planning something evil, and I swear in the goddess' name it will destroy every one of us, I said, settling on the table close to me. Oh, what is that up to now? Kaiser had started pacing. I released a breath, and slowly I began to summarize the situation of things in the dark circle. Vladimir is sick and completely evil. His entire plan has been to wipe out every magical being and force that stood against him, starting with the Council and all those affiliated with them. Vladimir was about to unleash a great darkness, one that the prophecy had spoken about in the crystal stones, and would be the end of all of us. The blood moon, which is in a few days, would help him gain access to this dark magic. He's been searching for a vessel to contain the magic first, and I have been doing all that I can to stop that from happening. But now, I fear that imbecile, Nikolai, has caught on, and he has found a way for Vladimir to gain access to the dark magic using the power of the blood moon. And Vladimir's victory with the blood moon will be the beginning of our end. What does that mean? Xena's shocked-filled voice sounded. Gaining access to this dark magic is just the beginning. This magic was banished away and imprisoned thousands of years ago by the old council. Now, Vladimir intends to unleash it, setting it free. And this would require a blood ritual. The old council managed to imprison this magic by anchoring a blood ritual, sacrificing many lives from different magical kinds. Vladimir will anchor another blood ritual to set it free. And for that, he's planning a war with the North, but this is only a disguise of what he wants to achieve, I finished. The air around me was suddenly too cold for my liking. Oh, goddess! The council had to know about this. Killian was up from his chair, stalking closer to me. I thought so too, but Vladimir has had a spy all along within the council, I muttered. Leo was right all along, Kaiser voiced, and I nodded. Do you know who the scoundrel of a traitor is? Felix, I called right away. Killian gasped in shock. What? And a similar shock found Kaiser. Felix? He repeated in disbelief. Are you sure? He attended today's meeting, and Vladimir confirmed it. He's been working for the Dark Circle for a long time, way before the attack on our pack. I glanced at Kai's way. He was the one who informed the Dark Circle about the prophecy, and who I was. I swear to all things sacred, I will kill that traitor. Kaiser was vibrating with a familiar rage, and I didn't doubt his words, not even for a second. If there's a traitor within the council, how on earth are we going to let them know what's going on, without this Felix, rattling back to the Dark Circle? Xena was up from her seat as well. We send a message to Leonardo and Morgan and warn them. They will know exactly what to do and apprehend Felix, Killian said, but the bigger problem is getting that message out. There might be a way for that, Kaiser cut in, and I raised an eyebrow, questioningly. But Nikolai, I started, but Kaiser shook his head. He doesn't have to know, sister. His words confused me the most, and before I could ask, Xena did. And how will that be possible? She urged him to continue. Kaiser took a deep pause, scanning our faces, before sighing. "This is a bit risky, but it'll work," he finally said, and somehow, I could feel a ray of hope blossom in my chest. Sheila's point of view. Kaiser drew in sharp breaths. "This is a bit risky, but it'll work," he said as his hazel orbs moved over Xena, Killian, and me. "All right, just spill it, Kai." Killian folded his arms around his chest. "I overheard some little birdies at the training camps for prisoners. The Dark Circle is sending their army to the southern regions," Kai started, and I nodded, affirming. "Yes. The southern regions have joined forces with the Council and the Pacts, Kingdoms, and Covens in North Central. Vladimir doesn't want to take chances. He wants to conquer the South regions before the Blood Moon. And he just might be successful because of Felix, all right. How does the attack on the South help us in any way?" Xena asked, confusedly. "We use the Dark Circle army going for the attack. They will be leaving Oasis, and Nikolai will be aware. We use this opportunity to send one of our own to warn Leo and Morgan about that's treachery," Kaiser explained more in detail. Kaiser's plan was brilliant but dangerous. First of all, it wouldn't be easy sneaking someone in, and secondly, if something were to go wrong with this plan, it'd be the death of everyone. I exhaled, leaning my head against the wooden wall. "That will be dangerous," Xena was also thinking like I was. "If anything goes wrong it won't. And this is the best chance we have to get across to those outside Oasis. We need all the help we can get from those outside, and with what Sheila said, things are getting worse here. We need to act smartly." Kaiser came again. "Let's do this," Killian sounded. "We send someone out to inform the others of Felix's involvement with the Dark Circle, and also, bring the Council's army right here. We end this before Vladimir does whatever he wants on the night of the Blood Moon. This is risky. Nikolai will know, you underestimate him. And besides, who exactly will be leaving with the army?" Xena wriggled her brows, questioningly. "Good question," I heard Adi whisper in my head. "We have to be careful about who we would be sending, we can't trust anyone," I said, sending glances at everyone. "I'm not leaving you alone, in here, with Sheila," Killian said with his heated gaze on me. I could feel his emotions in every word of his. We stared at each other intensely for a long minute, before Kaiser cleared his throat, bringing us back to the room. "And, I am not leaving either," Kaiser voiced, and his eyes darted to his mate, Xena. All of our eyes did. "No," she sounded, shifting her gaze from Kaiser to Killian and me. "No. No," she began pacing. "There's no way I'm leaving Kai, we need someone we trust." Kaiser went to her but she backed away, flinging her hands in the air. "And someone that knows this place well enough to bring the Council's army here. I can't, Kai. I am already a member of the Coven. Nikolai will know if I'm gone, and besides, it will take me days to get to the north with this on my wrist, limiting my magic," she half yelled. I pulled away from the wall. "I can break off the pyramid's magic. And, I have some friends in the Coven. They'll help. Trust me, Nikolai will have no idea someone's missing." Xena sighed softly. "Please, Xena. This is the only way to get rid of Vladimir and this place." Kaiser came softly at her. We remained in silence for a few more minutes, while Xena thought of things quietly. "All right, I'm on board. What's the plan to get into the army?" she asked, and a small smile found my lips. "The Dark Circle will be sending some witches along. We just have to ensure you are one of them, and I know someone who can help with that," I said, knowing full well Jaskier was in charge of that. "Once you are out of Oasis, you will flee from the army and head to the north. You have to go to the Crescent North Pack and find Morgan Reed or Leonardo Black, and inform them of our situation. They'll know exactly what to do," Killian told her. Xena nodded. "The blood moon is in 4 days until I return with the Council's army. What would you guys be up to?" "We need forces within the Oasis, and I get the prisoners on board. They'll be more than happy to join if it means escaping this hellhole. Everyone will be fighting for their freedom," Kaiser replied. "And the blood moon's ritual?" Killian asked in his richly deep voice. He pulled his amber gaze to me. "Whatever plan Nicholas has for the ritual, I have no idea. He intentionally kicked me out. But some of the witches within the coven will be informing me and we will be prepared as well. What's your plan, sister?" Kaiser asked, calmly. "I've been working on a spell to close off the access Nikolai has to the dark magic. If I can bind whatever prison holding the dark magic before Nikolai transfers it to a vessel, then we won't have any problem," I explained my plan in detail to them. "On the night of the blood moon, Vladimir wants me to perform the ritual. And I will, but instead of performing the ritual as per his wishes, some of the coven witches and I will be doing the exact opposite to get rid of this darkness. I don't like that, Sheila." Killian spoke too quickly, running his fingers through his hair. "Neither do I," Xena backed him up quickly. "It won't be pretty when Nicholas finds out you deviated from the actual ritual. By then it'll be too late and I've banished the darkness away for good. And trust me, Nikolai won't live a second after that. He is the very source holding Oasis boundaries. With Nikolai down, everyone will be free," I added, hoping they would all see reasons. I had this sickening feeling in my chest that if I don't do this, and that darkness finds a vessel, it would be too late. "I hate this plan, Sheila, but I trust you," Killian's words sent a comforting warmth to my chest. I glanced at Kai's way. He hadn't uttered a word yet. "Kai!" I called, and his gaze was still heavy on me. He also didn't like the risk involved in this. But at this point, we have no choice. These risks were nothing compared to the after damage if this darkness was set free. Kaiser sighed, concernedly. "Please, just be careful." I released the breath I was holding, nodding. "I will, and I meant it. A few days ago, I didn't really care about the dangers and risks involved. My only goal was destroying every chance Vladimir had to gain access to that darkness. But now I found out Killian was alive, it changes everything, and I don't plan on dying just when I finally have him back. I was so tired of all these problems, and for once in my life, I badly craved some normalcy." "We will need weapons," Killian said, and I agreed as well. "Some prisoners were very young in here, they'll need it to protect themselves." "Can be arranged. The warrior's armory, we could raid it, including some of the prisoners who would join us," Kaiser replied. "But we need to get rid of the symbols on the prisoners. Everyone would need to be at their best forms. Although I'm not allowed to leave the fortress, I can help with that, but I can't lift the pyramid magic for all prisoners, I told them. It would have been much easier to kill Nikolai and lift the magic of the pyramid on all the prisoners. But Nikolai's death now would only complicate our plans and create more problems that we definitely are not ready for. That's fine, Kaiser said. I guess we have a plan in motion, came Zena's voice. She was right, we did have a plan in motion, and hopefully, nothing would go wrong. There was so much at stake to fail. The army would be leaving for the attack on the southern regions in 2 days. I would inform Jaskier, he's a witch in the coven. He'll help make you among the witches leaving for the attack, I turned to Zena. And unfortunately, once you get out of Oasis, there's no way you can get to us, of course. This whole plan is giving me the chills, Zena fell onto one of the chairs. I knew exactly what she meant by that, I couldn't deny it too. The days ahead frightened me to the point my soul was restless. But I guess that was normal, this was a battle, our only chance of survival was our success. We had to win. Sheila's point of view and Vladimir. Zena asked abruptly as we continued strategizing on our plan. What do we do about him? Zena's question sent me deep into my thoughts. That question had always lingered in my thoughts, and until now, I had no answer for it. We end him along with this place, Kaiser replied almost joyously, but I remained silent, feeling Killian's eyes on me. I tilted my head to meet his penetrating gaze, before glancing over at Kaiser and Zena. We can't, I said, as calmly as I could. Why? Kaiser spoke quickly. Because aside from the insane fact that Nikolai did something and magic doesn't have any sort of effect on him, Vladimir cannot be killed, I stated flatly. What? The first day I woke up in this cursed place. I had used my magic on him and it didn't work. Nothing I did seemed to work on him. If he cannot be killed, what then are we going to do about him? Zena asked. I don't know, I was honest. Hopefully, the council will be able to figure something out. We went over the plan again as I helped Zena lift the pyramid's magic, limiting her magic. I also took a look at Kaiser's condition. His wolf wasn't dead, he was still inside somewhere. I used my magic to try to get to him, but I had no idea if it worked. If only it was a full moon, we would have our answers, but regardless, the blood moon was as powerful for wolves as it was for witches. Hopefully, Kaiser would be able to shift during the blood moon. I got up from my chair. As much as I preferred to remain here instead of returning to the lonesome fortitude of Vladimir's fortress, I knew it was wise to head back now. I've been out of the fortress for a long time. I have to get back before someone notices my absence. I sauntered to the door, after embracing Kaiser and Zena. I knew I just met her, but she was beyond lovely. And I was truly happy for Kai. He deserved it, they both did. I stepped into the unfeeling darkness that still lingered with Killian behind me, shutting the door. We moved slowly into the woods, in complete silence. I glanced over at Killian, his face was expressionless and his gaze was distant. I knew ever since he woke up, he had a lot on his mind. I didn't like the heartbreaking pain and rage that swirled within his amber gaze. He was holding so much back. I knew things with Killian, Vladimir, and I were complicated, but I felt uneasy inside and I hated it. Killian, I called his name, as I continued walking. Please, just get it off your chest. It kills me to see that look in your eyes. Killian groaned in frustration but kept on walking. Believe me, I am fine. I stopped in my tracks. My instant pause caused Killian to stop walking as well. No, you are not. There's something you want to say, please, just say it. My blue eyes pierced right through the fog of pain, rage, and frustration that clouded his gaze. And for a heartbreaking, painful second, we stared at each other. I am sorry, all right? I am so sorry, Sheila. Killian's words cut deep into my soul, making a howl at the back of my mind. Killian, what are you? No, he shook his head, pulling away a little. All I feel is pain, rage, and frustration deep within. This is all my fault. If only I had been by your side, you wouldn't be forced to remain at the side of that. It kills me more than anything to see you by his side. You are mine, Sheila. You are my life and the reason for my existence. I couldn't fight the tears that welled up in my eyes, rushing down my cheeks. You shouldn't blame yourself, Killian. Vladimir had always been after me, and his obsession only increased when he realized I was his mate. Killian's face crippled into a frown. What? Yes. Vladimir is also my mate, I told him, honestly. No, that cannot be possible. Yes, I know. I don't know how this is possible, or why the goddess had to punish me like this, but it's true. I found out he is also my mate, but that doesn't change anything, Killian. You are the one that has always been etched in my destiny, I uttered, unable to stop the tears that kept rolling down my cheeks, carelessly. In a split second, Killian invaded the space between us. His huge frame caged mine as his lips took mine in a deep, hungry kiss. I was forced to back away against a tree, as he pressed himself against me, sending indescribable pleasure through my body at the contact. He pulled away abruptly, his head was still bent to the right with his face inches away from mine and he looked crazed with need. My heart flipped at the sparks that shot through my body from where Killian's large hands were holding tightly to my waist. I love you, and I swear, there's no way I'd ever stop loving you. He pressed his body deeper to mine, whispering. Just at his words, I felt my core burn with desire. I wanted nothing at this moment but to have Killian's body against mine while he pleasured me in the best possible ways. The pull was irresistible. A shallow growl vibrated from his chest as he could no doubt smell my arousal. Killian's eyes turned a few shades darker, as he was struggling to control himself. We both were. My heart felt like it was going to explode at any moment in my chest from its fast beating. Only the goddess knew how much I missed this feeling. Only Killian could make me feel these things. His dark amber eyes bored down at me intensely, roaming my body once more, possessively with need and desire. He roared, and in one swift motion he picked me up by my thighs, slamming me against the tree, and his lips were on mine. The intensity of the current that charged through my body had me completely under Killian's spell. An overwhelming, beautiful sensation blossomed inside me and had all my thoughts, fears, and worries melt away. His kiss was dominating and fierce, as I wrapped my legs around his waist. One of his hands reached behind my head, tangling in my brown hair as he deepened the kiss. The world faded away as the raw intensity of the kiss consumed us both. I moaned desperately against his perfectly soft lips, as he licked the center of my mouth, gaining more access to my lips, and I parted them dutifully for him, kissing him back fiercely. He tasted divine and I just couldn't get enough of him. I ran my hands down his neck, his broad shoulders, and muscular back. Killian pressed into me harder, and I was loving the fireworks that exploded within me as our tongues danced together and Killian's hands caressed me gently. I never wanted this to end. Tonight was the best moment I have had in weeks. I didn't care about anything else. Not the problems of my life, nor the war, nor the greatest darkness meant to destroy us all, not even Vladimir. My eyes widened as I froze in Killian's arms. Immediately, I jerked away from him, panting. "No, what happened?" Killian questioned, alarmed. "I can't, Killian," I rushed, running my fingers through my hair. The skin on Killian's forehead creased in confusion. Before he asked, I shook my head. "Vladimir," I muttered. I completely forgot about him and got carried away by my emotions. I had spelled the connection we shared through the mate bond and blocked him out, but I wasn't completely sure whether or not he could feel the pain from being with Killian right now. "I have to go now," I said, even though it broke 80 and me to leave. We had to. I left Killian and used the path I had taken to the cabin back to the fortress, perfectly covering my tracks from the warriors that were on patrol. As soon as I sneaked back into the fortress, I hurried back to my chamber, moving with haste into my chamber. I had locked the door close when I felt the murdering coldness that circled me. I held my breath, swerving around to meet the bright golden irises of Vladimir staring at me from across the chamber. He was leaning against the wall nearest to the window. "Vladimir," I called, keeping my voice as neutral and stable as I could. "Took you long enough, darling," he spoke in an oddly calm manner, his eyes holding something I couldn't fathom as I waited for the words that were eager to abscond his red lips. "Where have you been?" I held his gaze as a small air rushed out of my lungs. "Sheila's point of view took you long enough, darling," I felt the deathly chill that glazed over his words. I honestly didn't expect him to be here, and by the looks of things, he had been waiting for me. "Where have you been?" Vladimir questioned, his eyes carefully wandering over my body. I removed the woolen cloak on my body, tossing it over the bed as I moved slowly to him. "Outside," I uttered, pressing my lips to a smile. "Training. Training." His lips curled in a smile of his. And the air around grew colder. At such an odd hour of the night. He was watching me closely, taking in my every movement. I nodded, still holding my smile, pulling my lips to his briefly. "Why? Is something wrong?" I asked. I was worried. "You couldn't be found within the fortress, and conveniently, I couldn't seem to connect with you." He counted his words slowly in his usual deep accented voice, snaking one hand around my waist, pressing me hard against his body. "I was training. The blood moon is only days away. I need my magic to be at its best." My electric blue eyes gazed into his eyes, and I could feel his presence through the mate bond, prying deep into my soul. "True." He pulled his other hand to my face, his finger trailing the outline of my face. "You are completely right." His voice was low, and still oddly calm while I held his rich gold gaze. Do me a favor, darling, take Sybil and Callie with you the next time you go training. Of course, I will be sure to do that, I muttered slowly, matching his tone without breaking apart from his piercing state. A deep smile found his lips again, and for a heated minute, we stared at each other intensely without mumbling a word. He shifted his gaze to my lips as his finger pinned my chin, and he kissed me fiercely. I kissed him back, but it didn't last long as he pulled away, and for a second, I swear I saw a flash of rage cross his golden gaze. Sleep tight, he pecked my lips once more. Mate, he voiced before moving away. There was a certain way he said the last word that made my stomach churn. By the way, you smell nice, he smiled, sauntering to the door. I remained fixed on my spot until he left my chamber. Once the door closed, I released the air that had been held in my lungs. He doesn't believe you, Adi jumped to the surface and voiced slowly in my head. She was completely right. He knew. Vladimir knew I was lying. He was no fool at all. And I had no idea if he felt anything from what had happened between Killian and me. I sighed, falling into the nearest chair I could find. I had spelled myself, masking Killian's scent and the others on me. But he somehow noticed. I sighed again as the knot in my chest tightened. I could already feel myself in danger in the fortress. Vladimir was incapable of killing me. I knew that much, but only the goddess knew what he could be capable of doing to me. Now, more than ever, nothing must go wrong during the blood moon. It was already at the peak of the day. I was in my chamber, and I had only stepped out for breakfast. Vladimir had been present for breakfast, and the time we spent together can only be described as normal. At least, it had seemed that way, up until Nikolai arrived and left the fortress with Vladimir. I had no idea what they were up to, and an uneasy feeling had crept into my soul since last night, and fearfully, it only kept on growing. I could barely sleep a wink last night. I was up all night, working on the spell that the witches and I needed to foil Vladimir's plans for the blood moon. I had messaged Jaskier, and unfortunately, Nikolai hasn't shared anything with the coven. To say that worried me was an understatement. It scared me. Nikolai was up to something, and I had no idea what it was. It was like rushing into a war and having no idea what to expect. I didn't like that one bit. Another thing that had successfully deprived me of some peace was last night's dream. I had no idea when I had dozed off, but I had jerked awake, drenched in my sweat. It was worse than the other dreams. I shut my eyes, burying my face in my palm. I saw chaos around. Blood soaking the earth, and death. It was a war. A war. Then my vision became dark and all I felt was a void within. I had no idea what it meant. But deep in my soul, I knew they were visions for what was yet to come. I pulled my eyes open, sweeping the careless locks of my hair behind my ears. I had to be done creating the spell the soonest. Vladimir had Sybil and Callie hovering around to keep an eye on me, almost every hour. I couldn't leave the fortress, but everything was going as planned. I had sent word to Jaskier to convey to Killian and my brother, letting them know of my situation and other important matters. The Dark Circle army would be leaving Oasis for the attack on the south regions at tomorrow's dusk. Xena had been included as well. I drew in a quick breath, breaking a small smile as I completed the third part of the spell, and now, I was left with the final piece. Killian's point of view. Kaiser and I were at the borders of the oasis. We've been here for hours, hiding against the towering trees, while blending into the night, ensuring we stayed out of sight as we watched the last group of the Dark Circle army leave the oasis through a portal created by Nikolai himself. I backed against the tree as Nikolai and his witches began to leave the boundaries. I shifted my gaze to Kaiser, whose attention was still on the invisible portal the army had walked right through. I knew aside from everything that was going on he was worried for his mate. I would be too. Xena was among that army, and as of this moment, she was completely on her own. But I had my trust in her and her capabilities. She would do just fine, and lead the Council's army to Oasis. Kai, I placed a hand on his shoulder, pulling him from his deep thoughts. She will be fine, I told him honestly. He needed to be reminded that Xena was an impressive witch that could take care of herself. His hazel orbs turned to me. Yeah, I know, he said, as we retreated into the woods, heading back to training camps. I pulled up the cloth around my neck, covering half of my face as Kai and I headed back to the training camps. There was still a lot to be done, and frankly, I preferred to be busy doing something, because all I kept thinking about was Sheila. And her situation had me going crazy. I was doing everything I could not to lose it and charged into the fortress to find her. I knew more than anyone else that it would be stupid, and I would only be endangering everyone's lives. But Riker had begun to recover quickly, and the urge to have my mate near me was clouding every sense of mine. I breathed out roughly, moving with speed in the woods. Soon, Kai and I sneaked into the camps, blending among the prisoners. We had only tomorrow and the next before the blood moon, and so far, we've gotten the prisoners on our side. It wasn't really hard convincing a few, and slowly, the news began to travel among the prisoners in the camps, and to those in the village. Many were more than willing to join the resistance. All that was left was to wait for the right moment to raid the armory, but that would have to be on the night of the blood moon, to avoid unnecessary difficulties. I moved to the large field where the prisoners were training under the supervision of warriors. I took shade under one of the trees, leaning against its trunk, while my eyes were fixed on the faint outline of the fortress a long distance away from the camps. Kaiser and I had received Sheila's message from a witch friend of hers, Jaskier. Her situation wasn't looking good at all, and it worried me greatly. That imbecile has her caged in that place and had her watched every hour. I just couldn't wait to get out of this place and take Sheila as far away from here. Leonardo's point of view houses burned as the flames engulfed the roofs, blazing a fraction of deep red, livid purple, and amber. Soon, the black smoke swallowed up everything. I paused to scan around, watching expressionlessly as our army darted between the rogues, tearing them apart without any remorse. The witches were busy prying deep into the minds of rogues, hoping to find whatever piece of information about the Dark Circle, especially where they were keeping my sister and brother. With the paled look of disappointment sent my way by Gwen, I knew once again this attack had left us without even the slightest knowledge of where my siblings could be. My wolf released a grueling growl. I felt anger and frustration rise all the more within me as I went for the closest imbecile I could find. I struck a boot in the puddle of their blood that had formed, flowing endlessly around, tearing apart some rogues, until there was completely nothing left of them. I was about to charge onto my next prey when I realized that one of the vile leeches was still alive. He was still breathing. I strode over to his motionless state, watching his sockets twitch in fear and desperation. I couldn't blame him. Even I would cringe at my state and appearance, but I stopped caring a while back, and the last piece of sanity that glued me soundly together was gone. My fingers extended into claws and unapologetically, I dived my claws into the chest of the rogue, gutting out his heart. We were currently in the East Central, raiding one of the Dark Circle's camps for rogues in hopes we could at least find out a location of where the Dark Lord could be. I knew without a doubt that that's where he had Sheila and Kaiser. It's been 8 weeks already since the attack on the Crescent North Pack, and everything turned for the worst. Sheila was taken. Kaiser had disappeared along with her, and Killian. I drew in a sharp breath. Killian was dead. Nothing had been the same since. The Dark Circle kept on growing, conquering more packs, covens, and kingdoms associated with the Council. They had successfully wiped out the East regions and West, leaving no survivors behind. And those that were spared were taken in as prisoners. My icy blue eyes gazed over the destruction of the place. I retracted my claws, scanning through the black ash and foul stench of burning corpses for Morgan. My eyes zeroed in on him. He was across the meadow, drenched in blood that wasn't his. His crystal green eyes turned in my direction, sensing my stare. I shook my head to him and didn't miss the heartbreaking pain that sprinted across his green irises. Turn the whole place to dust, I turned to my beta, Genzel, instructing the army from my pack and that of Morgan's to return to base while we left with the Council's army. I jumped on my horse, and so did Morgan. Without wasting time, we dashed off, riding back to North Central, together with the army from the Council. We rode with speed on our horse, dwelling in silence as the sun began to withdraw for the day. I glanced over at Morgan, and as usual, he was quiet with his gaze up ahead, the path back to North Central. These weeks have been difficult, especially for him. His pain and loss could be seen in his eyes. I could only begin to imagine how he must feel, having to witness the death of his only family. I can't believe I was about to say this, but I never wanted Killian dead. Regardless of our differences, he was still my sister's mate, and his death would only hurt her. And now, with everything that had happened the last weeks, she wasn't the only one that had gotten hurt. The Dark Circle attack did a lot of damage to the Crescent North Pack. Everyone had lost something in one way or the other, even Valerie. And many would have lost their lives as well if it wasn't for Sheila's outburst right before she was taken. Upon Killian's death, she had lost control of her magic, and only the goddess knew what she had done, but it brought back only a few warriors that had died, fighting alongside us in the meadow. What are you thinking about? I was forced out of my thoughts, hearing Morgan's deep voice. He lowered the speed of his horse, and we were now riding alongside each other with the Council's warriors up ahead. These past weeks, I replied, pulling my gaze to his green stones. It's frustrating that once again we've reached another dead end, I added, shifting my gaze up ahead. Morgan remained silent for a brief second. We will find her, he muttered slowly, whispering under his breath, but I could hear. All of them, he added, falling back into the unwelcoming silence, and I could feel him getting lost in his thoughts again. I knew exactly what he was thinking. His thoughts were reflected in his gaze. After Sheila was taken through the portal, we couldn't find Kaiser, and Killian's lifeless body had gone missing too. Our best guess was they had gone through the portal as well. He didn't say, but deep down I knew Morgan still hadn't accepted the truth that Killian was dead. He clung to this hope that Killian had somehow survived. Frankly, I never thought a day like this would come when I would find myself appreciating the company of my worst enemy. The last weeks made me realize how much Morgan as well as the rest of his pack cared for Sheila. It was already twilight as we approached the capital, heading for the council's castle. After riding for a short time, we reached the council's court. I alighted from my horse. Morgan and I made our way into the court. The court was crowded and a meeting was in session. As soon as we were sighted, the loud arguments died instantly, and everyone's gaze was on us. How did it go? One of the elder wolves, Elder Walter, asked quickly, and I shook my head, dropping on one of the vacant seats. The witches found nothing in their memories. Those rogues have no idea about the location of the Dark Lord, Morgan filled them in. There were outbursts of hisses and murmurings. The council has not been doing great either. After the attack in the Crescent North Pack, Sheila's identity was exposed as my sister and the White Wolf. So to say, the council felt they had the right to be furious at my silence. They had insisted this tragedy would have been avoided if Sheila's identity was exposed sooner. But I disagreed. I knew deep down that things would have been far worse if I had exposed my sister to the council the second I found her. I still didn't trust any of them, and now more than ever, with everything that has been happening. Regardless of our different views, the truth remains, we had to work together to find Sheila. She was our priority. My blue eyes shifted to Zaria. She was awfully quiet. I scanned the entire court and there was no sign of Amelie. Silence. Elder Noah halted the deafening whispers around, and Zaria stood up from her seat. I understand everyone is going crazy with fear, but we must be focused. Amelie had another vision and it's terrible. I leaned closer upon hearing that. Ever since Sheila had been taken, Amelie's visions became more frequent and they only grew worse recently. It was from her vision we learned about the dark magic that has no origin nor name, yet posed a great danger to our entire realm as it was written in the crystal stones. It had been in existence from the dawn of magic itself, and through the years known as the Shoda's magic, named after the first ancient witch that had harbored this magic. The old council had found a way to banish the Shoda's magic, and now, someone was trying to unleash it. We knew it was the Dark Circle. What did she see? My gaze shifted to Felix for a second before moving back to Zaria. The end of all of us, and the rise of evil, she bit out slowly, counting her words as the court broke into chaos. I was completely frozen in my seat, speechless. The loud mumbling that rose in the air lingered for a few more minutes before the court became quiet. There must be some kind of way to stop this, Morgan's cold voice sounded. That's true. We could change this future, Damien, the demon overlord said. To do that, we must find the White Wolf and ensure that darkness doesn't wander free before the blood moon, Zaria said. This is exactly what the prophecy had warned us about 14 years ago. The rise of the greatest darkness, and the White Wolf is the only one that can put an end to this. She is supposed to be here with us. A war is coming. If the White Wolf fails, we all are doomed. I couldn't stop the wild pounding of my heart. And for the first time in my life, I felt fear and even more for my poor sister. I can't listen to this, I heard Morgan mutter to me, before pulling up from his seat, and storming out of the court. My eyes fell back on Zaria as she locked her gaze with me. The blood moon is only a night away, we have to find her. I sighed deeply. I couldn't listen to this either. I was up from my seat, exiting the court. I met Morgan outside, he was already on his horse about to leave, when suddenly, he froze and his emerald green eyes became foggy. He was being mind-linked. I could hear his blasting heartbeat as he broke off from the mind link. His deep eyes found mine in a haste. What is it? I asked quickly. We have to get to my pack at once. There's a witch there. And she's asking for us, he rushed on quickly, making my eyebrows cripple. How on earth does that? I began, but Morgan spoke quickly again. She belongs to the dark circle, my eyes widened as he voiced. Immediately, I got on my horse, and we were about to ride off when a voice sounded behind us. Where are you both off to in a haste? I swerved my head around to find Felix's annoying face, staring at us from afar. Did something happen? My gaze found Morgan's, who looked equally pissed and impatient to get out of here. Why don't you mind your business, Felix? I bellowed over my shoulder, kicking my horse in motion, and we rode out of the council's territory.